Hello everyone, welcome to this roundup. As gene editing technologies like CRISPR allow genetic material to be inserted, deleted, modified, or replaced in any living biological species, the rapidly emerging gene editing capability is exciting many for its potential applications. The rapid advances in genome editing applications are opening the door to a deeper understanding of the human health ecosystem. From therapeutic to non therapeutic applications and enhancement, the potential applications of gene editing are so vast that human life can be transformed beyond recognition. To discuss gene editing applications with one such scientist, innovator, and entrepreneur further, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Rajesh Chowdhary to this roundup. Dr. Chowdhary, he is the co-founder and CEO of Pharmacogenomics based in the United States. Welcome, Dr. Chowdhary. I'm honored to have you on this roundup.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Jeffrey. Pleasure.
Wonderful, wonderful, Rajesh. So, what is driving this rapid expansion of gene editing technologies and applications?
Well, first of all, it's over a period of time we have it's a part of the technology evolution. So essentially, as it's a part of the human progress, we have been progressing in technology by leaps and bounds. So essentially, that is the reason. It's human innovation that is in display.
Yes, very true, very true. That technology is advancing so rapidly. So, as you see from your assessment, there is not just one gene editing tool. There are many gene editing tools, and there are many research initiatives emerging, and there are many applications emerging for commercial use. So, from your assessment, what are the trends in gene editing that you find to be very exciting for the future of humanity?
Well, gene editing Cas9 CRISPR is the most popular one, and we have adapted this system from the bacterial system. So bacteria uses this approach to disable virus. So we actually developed using RNA and a guide sequence to find a pattern. So it's like a search engine. We find the pattern wherever the mutation, wherever we want to actually edit the DNA. And then it searches the DNA or the genome and finds that pattern. And then Cas9 would cut that DNA at that place, at that location. So that's where we are. Currently, looking at.
Sure. So when you say that you got this technique from bacteria, do all bacterial cells use the same technique, or this is only any specific bacterium that is using this technique, or based on which you all have developed, the scientific community has developed these gene editing tools?
Well, that I'm not clear about. Which bacterial system, but the enzyme which we use, that can be changed. But the concept here is that the fun part is the pattern.
Yes.
So the pattern that we search in the genome is like 20 bases long. It can vary a little bit here and there, but that pattern is typically unique, in the entire 3 billion base pairs that we have. So the RNA along with the guide sequence that is there, it searches for that sequence perfectly, almost accurately. Cas9, there has been a lot of excitement with regard to CRISPR-Cas9 because earlier techniques which were there, this is much cheaper, efficient, faster, and accurate. So because of that, all of a sudden, people have started looking at this particular technology.
I see.
And moreover, there is another reason to this. In China, for example, there's a scientist who something known as CRISPR babies. So the father of those babies actually suffered from HIV virus. So what he did was he edited Delta 32 mutation in the genes of those babies. So with the view that if that mutation is there, it's going to protect those babies from carrying the HIV virus, so from AIDS. So that's why all of a sudden, and that experiment was actually done. So I mean, people, the world could see. I mean, this technology was working. At least some experiment was done. So that was all excitement started to take place.
Very true, very true. That it is news everywhere, all across nations. So when that scientist or doctor, whoever conducted that gene editing, to remove that HIV disease potential, did he do that editing in the embryo or sperm? How did he do that?
In the embryo,
Embryo.
in the embryo, I mean, you could in the embryo, I mean, so the germline thing or the embryo and the somatic cells that we have, somatic is fine. I mean, we can cater different diseases, but here he did in the embryo itself. So that is the whole problem, because I mean, it's going to now forget about doing experiment and removing a segment from the DNA. But what about the complete genome or DNA transplant? I mean, we now have lung transplant, heart transplant. Maybe at some stage in the future, we might also have DNA transplant, the entire DNA. So if somebody is smart, handsome, and if parents would want, beautiful babies, or they would say, okay, I mean, this guy looks very handsome, and let's get the entire DNA of this guy out, and we would want, somebody like him, our babies like him.
Yep.
So you never know. I mean, right now we are talking about just a segment of the DNA. And so equivalently, analogously, you do surgery with respect to heart when there's a occlusion in your arteries. Similarly, something of that nature is done for lungs. But when there is a bigger problem, then you do lung transplant, heart transplant.
Yes.
So similarly, who knows? I mean, the way we are progressing, I mean, the entire DNA would be, so it's like a clone of that person, multiple clones. Now that's where the ethics and regulatory and policies and those aspects come into picture.
Very true, very true. Because designer babies, like you just said, is going to become a trend. Everybody would want to have, of course, beautiful babies, intelligent babies. I mean, when we figure out what are the genes that or the pathways that are going to, make a direct impact on how intelligent a person can be, then of course, people are going to go for that kind of gene editing to have their babies or themselves, become more intelligent. That trend will happen, and that is something we have to be very cautious about, because we are right now focusing only on the genes. Editing gene, taking out gene, or adding a gene to get the desired functionality, but the gene expression, how under what conditions certain genes express, that is something we need to pay more attention to, because without understanding under what conditions, what environment certain genes are expressing, and certain diseases are happening or certain diseases not happening, or certain functionalities you see in human, certain personality traits, we have to have a deeper understanding. So there is a lot of research that still needs to be done. But if we see how the genome editing is done today, not just what happened in China, but all across nations, how do you see it fundamentally transforming healthcare and the human ecosystem, as far as making human body more healthier, and getting rid of the diseases that becomes a economic burden to a lot of nations, like diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular diseases, all different kinds of diseases, because it's a lifelong treatment that people have to go through, and it adds a lot of economic burden to nations. So do you see any possibility, potential for those kind of gene editing techniques or approach coming in the near future?
Yes, of course. In fact, there's a company, and they have got huge amounts of money very recently. They are focusing on just heart disease now, and what they are claiming is very soon we are going to have cure. So one shot of medication or a drug, and you are done for life. I mean, you are good to go. your heart disease is going to be over. I I don't know. I mean, personally, I think unless until I see that, I mean, it's very difficult to actually, because the thing is this: all these polygenic diseases, they are not caused just because of. Right now, we have very lesser understanding of what exactly are the causes for these diseases. Like for example, there is one mutation. Now mutations are also they keep changing over a period. As the technology is advancing, we are having more mutations coming into picture. So the thing is, like, what exactly is causing, and this is context specific, you see. So depending on the environment, depending on other variables like your race and other things. So for example, a pattern which is detrimental or is causing a disease in a particular person may not be causing the same disease in other person. It might also be possible that different interactions which are taking place, and this is combinatorially explosive. I mean, there are tons of combinations to test, and that's also again context dependent. So like this is a very like classic case where CCR5 gene is protective for a disease, AIDS, is causing other diseases. And that all other diseases means, like for example, influenza and West Nile virus. And very recently paper got published in Nature Medicine, which is in a way hinting that if you had that mutation which is protecting you from AIDS, would likely reduce your you would get killed prematurely. I mean, you would die prematurely. So so these are the problematic aspects, how, unless until we clearly know for a person what are the causal factors for a disease, how are we going to fine, okay, the DNA is the genome is 3 billion. If we know the exact patterns along the genome which we know for sure that they are causing the disease for that person, how are we going to do the DNA editing process? So that is the point. Unless until we know the real causal factors for diseases, what are we going to edit on?
Very
Forget
true.
about the monogenic. So that's why I said, like, for monogenic diseases, they are simpler systems or disease systems because they are monogenic. Single genes are causal factors for seemingly. That's the knowledge for today. So if gene editing works for those diseases, then okay, we are far more confident that okay, we can use this technology for other diseases, maybe for more complex diseases. Complex diseases at this stage, for any disease, we are not at all sure what are the true causal factors. Mutations, okay, they are some mutations are very specific for some diseases, but not all. And what effect, if we edit those mutations, what effect, positive effect, for example, we would we could know, because we know some mutations are specific to some disease, but what harmful effects those editing of those mutations would cause. So that's a real, not only fascinating, interesting part, but that's also a pretty, in a way, scary part. Because now, come to think of this, if I edit the DNA for a drug, so it's like a parallel system which we are causing, where drug operates. Drug operates at the protein level, and gene editing is a sort of a new medicine which is going to operate at the DNA level. For drugs, we can stop the drug because drug actually manages the disease, not cures the disease or make a permanent change. Okay, for some diseases, when you take medication for chronic diseases, permanent damage do tend to occur because of side effects. But here, if we make the change in the DNA, that's almost like permanent, because this company is, again, like for example, saying one shot and you are good to go. Fine, okay, 1 million shot and then you are good to go. What effects are going it's going to cause? I mean, nobody talks about that at this stage. So I mean, that's where we are. I'm very excited, but at the same time, my feeling is that let us be realistic. Let
Yes.
us be realistic. It's a hype. There is a lot of hype. There is exciting technology in place, but we have to be a little careful about
No, we have to be very
what
careful. We have to be very careful. I think
might.
rather, if I have to take, if I'm a decision maker, rather than focusing on disease by disease, what gene plays role in which disease, I would focus on human health, making human body much more stronger, in the sense that focus on what genes play role in metabolism, that everybody's metabolism is very active, and those kind of things I would focus on, rather than going disease by disease. But again, let's see where all the scientists are focusing their approach on. And because this ability to change DNA with precision has transformative potential. I mean, everyone thinks it's very precise, that these tools makes us the cuts at a very precise location, but we still don't know what exactly is there on those locations, and what role it plays in human health or human diseases. So there is a lot to understand, and from the loss of functions to gain of functions, what will we lose by splicing the gene at certain positions. So there is still a lot that needs to be understood, but the potential of this technology is very vast. And of course, everybody is very excited about it, because this is almost like a new industry is developing, and with a huge potential, but it has a huge implications, because it plays a role in evolution also. And if we carry this kind of changes in embryos, then it is going to be hereditary, it's going to be for life. Like you said, that companies working on, just take one gene shot, and then you never have to worry about it. But those changes will be hereditary, because then their kids will go through those changes, their kids. And if we have made mistakes, then it is going to have a bigger impact on the human population. So there are a lot of consequences, and that's what we need to be very careful about. From your assessment, do you know if there is any scientific body that is paying attention to all this risk that could emerge from that? Because gene editing gives us capability, of course, to pinpoint the location and function of a gene, but the question is that what emerges and what impact will it have in the future. So we cannot be just short-sighted and think of just splicing a gene and adding gene or deleting gene, and not worry about what bigger implications that would be.
Yeah, so of course, I mean, the government has to play an active role at some stage, and in fact, there have been some initiatives recently which they have started looking into these kind of issues, whether to allow editing of embryo DNA. One more thing which I want to mention here is that although there have been specializations in different fields, like for example, we have super specialty in medicine, cardiology, this and that. That's all fine, but the adverse effect of that is we have become silos. So, for example, if although like God has created as one single entity, one single body, it's not that my heart is different from me myself, or my brain is different from me myself. What happens is, like nowadays, regarding gene editing, companies have come up which are specializing only in a particular disease. So come to think of this, if I have a heart problem or if I have a lung problem, that lung company would come and try to focus only on my lungs. The problem there is, okay, my lung would get better, but the adverse effect of that treatment would go somewhere, let's say in my legs or in my bones or in my blood. They would care least about that, because that's not their specialty. And that's in fact happening. I've seen quite a few examples in the real world where drugs are given, like for example, antipsychotic drugs. They are just awful. So if you were to take antipsychotic drugs for a long period of time, you would become immobile after a few years. So because of so many things like drug-induced Parkinsonism, and there are thousands of other diseases which the psychiatrist, like if I'm getting my brain treated and administering antipsychotic drugs, he would care just about my brain. He's least bothered about other parts of my body. So the system that we are now encountering is not holistic in nature.
Yes.
We are just focusing on individual components of the body, while the point to what we need to realize is that myself is not that single component. I'm a full complete body. I'm a complete entity.
Yes.
That's where the problem. So let's say for the gene editing part, if my I suffer from a disease and I get my DNA cut, that disease is fully cured. But on the other hand, I catch thousands of tens of other diseases. What is going to, who is going to be held accountable for? There should be some accountability, right? So that is the issue. Otherwise, the technology is fantastic. I mean, actually, bacterial system that system is a claimant for Nobel Prize. Maybe, I mean, it's such a good very exciting technology, but it needs to treat a human body from a holistic angle. Not just one part. I mean, okay, you treat this part and the other parts go bad. No, that would then what is the difference between the current modern medicine, the drug system that we have? Gene editing is far more dangerous, because the change is permanent. You need to how would you reverse that change? Then they would come up with something which is going to reverse that. I don't know how that is going to happen, but at this stage, it's broadly speaking, it's a very exciting, but we need to be real.
Very true. And like you said, the whole body is not just one organ. Everything is interconnected and interdependent.
Exactly. That is the thing. Yes.
So
we are a fine balance. The nature has created us as a fine balance. I mean, we are in, unless until we abuse our body, then it's a different matter. But otherwise, we are a fine balance. I mean, so I mean, we are perturbing or disturbing that system with something, with a permanent change. And what effect is going to have is, I mean, we just have to wait and watch.
Yes, no, I mean, I hear your concern, because so far over the years, nations developed systems that looked at problem in silos and focused on, individual problems. If we talk about human health and human body, then we focus on individual disease, not on, the why this disease is happening, because there must be something wrong in how the human body is operating. So there was no focus on that. But now it looks like, there are some emerging, trends, which gives a hope that, not just the, healthcare system, but other systems also, financial system and risk management system, everywhere, people have started thinking about, interconnectedness, interdependencies, because unless we understand, what is the impact of doing one action, how it's going to impact the rest of the components of a nation or the rest of the components of a body, we have to pay attention to that. And when we use technology like gene editing, which has, evolutionary implications, and can also, in the worst scenario, has a potential for extinction, triggering some changes which would, cause extinction of human species. Those kind of risks are there. So we have to be very, very cautious. We have to figure out who is accountable, who is responsible, who is, making sure that we are doing everything that is necessary to prevent such, critical securities that could emerge from there. So we will wait and see, but your concerns are very valid, and I think we have to pay attention to that. Now, as we move forward, I mean, like we talked about that in China there are already experiments happen about the creating designer babies, gene editing, though their effort was to prevent the HIV, but it's still a designer baby. But there are also like you said, many initiatives emerging for treating diseases, cardiovascular diseases and other diseases. But it's not just the humans we are talking about, we are also experimenting on plants and animals, and we are trying to develop disease resistant crops, and trying to do there are many other initiatives emerging. So what are those non-human, non-healthcare initiatives that you are aware of across nations that people are working on, scientists are working on?
Well, the agriculture is one sector where our like for example different crops, cotton and others like genetically modified agriculture produce. We are working on. So over a period, what happens like for example insect resistant crops. So in order to make those crops, they are changing the very characteristics of that crop. So I mean, that crop is going to be resistant to insects, but it may change the nature of that crop. Like for example, uh, the taste, for example, might get affected or something else. Basically, the whole idea here is wherever we are going to make change, there are going to be beneficial effects and the adverse effects, and we have to bring the right balance between these two.
Very
That's the it's like walking on a rope. So you have to balance, and how they're going to define the balance, that's a very very wide and subjective area. So at the end of the day, the point is that balance. I mean, well, your for humans, I mean, your quality of life should get better. Longevity of life should be there. I mean, these kind of issues.
Yes, yes, I hear you on that. Now, as you just said, the quality of life, longevity, all those, variables are, scientists are focusing on. So, how do you see, if we talk from evolutionary perspective, if we talk from, let's say, intelligence, because right now there is a lot of concern that, as AI, reaches towards technological singularity, then, we humans have to compete with, artificial super intelligence. And will we be able to, evolve that rapidly like, AI? And we are not, of course, human evolution, where we have reached has taken, thousands and thousands of years. Changes that happen on the evolutionary scale were very slow, and it happened on its own time if we look at human evolutionary history. So if we talk about intelligence to compete with artificial super intelligence, then do you see that gene editing would be able to help us to bring those kind of evolutionary changes for human intelligence, so that we can compete with artificial super intelligence in the coming years?
Well, first of all, artificial intelligence, although it has huge, utility, but then again, there is a lot of hype in there. The thing is, at the end of the day, artificial intelligence or machine learning is just a tool which humans are going to, design. Einstein had said one beautiful quote that uh, intelligence or imagination is something which is very unique to human, and it's infinite. So that is where the when you have large number of variables, there AI and machine learning do play a great role. That's absolutely without doubt. But when it comes to imagination, because what variables you are going to feed to the AI or machine learning system to learn is you are going to feed in. Although so, for example, uh, there is some concept known as unknown unknowns. Unless until you know about that, you don't even know what you don't know. so, so what you're going to feed into your AI system is based on your knowledge, and that AI system can only go so much, ahead based on what you have fed. But there can be an entire big world out there where there could be other many meaningful, several meaningful variables which you are missing, and that AI system can go with derived variables, higher order variables to train itself. But I mean, these variables which are hidden, that AI system would find it a lot of difficulty in lot of difficulty means those would be simply be hidden. So only imagination, only human. So I'm little skeptical that AI can do a great job. But as far as imagination goes, I'm not sure whether it's going to overpower humans. Humans they can govern us, they can manage us, they can do all sorts of things, but they cannot, in imagination, they cannot go beyond us. That is clear.
So,
So
I mean, I hear you. Imagination, creativity, or ideas, new ideas, all these things are, very unique to humans. But when we talk about, let's say, memory,
mhm.
our human memory is not that efficient as, as you see with the machines, because, you try to ask any question immediately, you get an answer. But we try to remember, it will take us, a lot of times we don't even remember what happened, before a few years, or we don't have that clear memory. So that
Abs-
processing power, we don't have that rapid, such a, quick processing capability like, machines.
Absolutely. So that's where the difference lies. The regular work, which can be work done by thousands of people, mechanized work, that or prediction using thousands of variables, machines can do fabulously well. But when you imagine, I mean, Einstein could do experiments just by thinking how stars are going to, they interact with each other. Those kind of imaginative experiments, I don't. Maybe machines are going to do that at some stage, but overpowering in the sense like going beyond human imagination is something which I have I don't know. Let me put it that. But again, coming back to gene editing, parents would like their kids to be like Einstein, right? Or maybe somebody with an IQ of 200 plus or whatnot. Yes, that's a concern. That is a clear concern. How, again, handsome. So that's where, as I said, like maybe at some stage in life we would see DNA, entire DNA. Why just chop a little segment out of DNA? Just get the entire DNA transplanted from some, tall, handsome person as a designer into a designer baby. So,
Yeah, that
so
possibility is there. You are right, but and then all these things are tied to the evolution, because evolution occurs when there is a change in genetic material, right? So
mm,
it's DNA. If we are once, like what happened in China, that change that happened in the embryo, that is inherited, and now it will pass on to the future generations if that person is lucky enough to have a child, if they live long enough to have children. So those evolutionary impact, it's not going to happen in one generation, but several generation, those changes that keep happening, and then we will see evolutionary changes happening. So gene editing is basically throwing the whole evolution process in turmoil, because so far, the mutations happen, in a natural ways, and our human systems and processes, over the years were able to handle those mutations, or they accepted the impact, they rejected the impact, whatever happened. But the evolutionary process, it was very slow, and it happened on its own time, and nature created that. But now we have the tool to do the evolutionary process, ourselves. We can create this, we can entirely fundamentally disrupt the evolutionary process. So if, let's say, scientists are able to do that, scientists like you in the coming years are able to do those kind of big changes, that would impact the future of humanity. what impact do you see because of it? Do you think that scientists are thinking of interfering in the evolutionary process?
Well, that seems to be I mean, that's a absolutely brilliant point. I mean, that's what is going to be, what is happening. I mean, right now, what is gene editing? That is, we are playing with the nature, right? Um, I don't know what is frankly what is going to happen if we start to play with the nature, and I just do not know. And it's so fast changing the information. Like, for example, just a few days back, a paper got published in Nature. So earlier, our thinking was that each cell has the same, genome. So almost similar somatic cells, they have all similar genome. But now it seems that according to that paper, they actually compared human different cells, I think around 500 cell types. They try to find out the composition of the DNA, and they compared the genome. So they found out actually the mutation pattern itself is so there's a mosaic, like different cells have their different mutation like skin cell, um, inside your stomach the cells are there, and lungs. So these cells typically had a mosaic where you had lots of mutations. But the thing is, like, those mutations are deadly or not. I mean, they are going to cause cancer or not. That's a different matter altogether. Earlier the thinking was that we had almost similar type of DNA where I mean, mutation and the genome itself, there was consistency in different cells. So this paper all of a sudden has brought another view or another thinking that, I mean, mutations, we are full of mutations. In some patients, those mutations, could create diseases, whereas in general, those mutations are harmless.
Yes.
So these findings they found out in normal cells. So what my sense is that we have at this stage we have very little knowledge. So I don't know what gene editing is going to, unless until we are very clear about what is causing the diseases, which we may know at some stage in. I mean, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years down the line, we may know the causal factors. So at this stage, at least, the state of the art is that we are not fully, forget about fully, we are just very, we have very little knowledge about the causal factors for the disease. And if we do not know that, then what are we going to edit? So with half knowledge, if we try to edit something, and if something goes wrong, most likely it will, according to Murphy's law. So I mean, where we are going to land, so we have, it's not that we should not pursue the technology. Technology is extremely exciting, but we should be extremely cautious and careful about the adverse effects.
Yes.
You pointed out, this. Going, we are playing with the nature, so these changes are going to transmit to the progenies and go down the line. What effect that is going to cause is another, head of a multi-headed amoeba. So it's
a lot to
it's a lot to think about, lot to regulate. Yes, it's a problematic thing. On the other side, not this side. This side looks extremely exciting. So we have to keep the hype little down. Yeah, that's about. So there we are. That's the reality. That's the fact. So.
You're right. I mean, the technology is exciting. You're absolutely right. So when we come across such a brilliant technology, then we would think that, yeah, let's do this, let's do that. We get carried away and start doing experimentations where we should not be. Because, for example, the paper that you mentioned about, I have read that, and it's something to be very concerned about, because this is not just one set of DNA or that is there in the entire body. There are a lot of variations, and variables. So we don't, like you said, we don't have much understanding about what variables play a role into human health or human diseases. So there is a lot to, first we need to understand before we start experimenting with, nature. And what I don't understand is there is a group of scientists, they are trying to bring back the species that have already been extinct. Wow. Why do we need to do that?
I don't know. I just don't know.
Somebody would say, let's bring dinosaurs back. And, why do we need to go that path? So that again, yes, all these things are exciting. The very thought that, yes, we can bring back the species that has been extinct, but do we really need to do that? But again, I hope that somebody is.
Yeah, I have a very strong, faith in the nature. So nature is, as I said, like it's a fine balance, and it knows how to play its game, how to balance things everywhere. I mean, the entire so nature is very well aware. Uh, and it even doesn't know that these different disciplines exist. Like, for example, this actually Richard Feynman had mentioned. It's beautifully captured. So I mean, there are different disciplines: physics, maths, chemistry, biology, but the nature does not know that.
Yes.
Even then, nature is such a fine balance, and we are still struggling to understand different aspects of nature. uh, just one point where we had touched upon just a moment back. Uh, this paper where it found out, these different cells have a different makeup as far as the genome is concerned. Now, it all of a sudden, so there was some researchers were working on cell-free DNA. So the assumption there were they were thinking that those cell-free DNAs, like in case of cancer, they are emerging from coming out in the blood from the tissues that were affected from cancer. But now, if that was the thinking, the real premise behind the experiment was that. But all of a sudden, this paper has come out. Now, this paper has mentioned that those mutations could be there in normal cells. I mean, those are normal cells, but the mutations exist. But those mutations are not causing any harm. So all of a sudden, that cell-free DNA analysis or experiment, which folks were thinking that okay, these mutations are only emerging out of cancer-affected cells. That idea has gone for a toss. All in just one shot, with the public with this particular publication which has come out, where they have mentioned, the genome with different DNA or mutation makeup. They are different. There's a mosaic of mutations in different cells. It's not the same as was the earlier thinking. So I mean, things. So the point is that the information is changing so rapidly. Our beliefs are changing so rapidly in the light of new information that is coming in. So things are exciting. Getting a dinosaurs back. I mean, I don't know what to say.
It is, yes, you are right. I mean, the information is emerging very rapidly, and there is a lot to be, careful about because, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but just based on having a presence of a gene, a lot of people are, going for, removing off their breast, surgeries, just being so fearful that because they have a certain gene that, that will cause breast cancer, and this people are women are opting for removal of breast. So there is I would rather focus on what role will play in the gene expression and focus on that, rather than moving certain organs in the body. But there is a lot of fear out there, and as soon
you,
as
you brought a very pertinent point. In the general, this is about the healthcare. So direct to consumer, there are companies out there which come out with. Then there are big companies which are having extrusion into our system at a very fine granular level. Like, for example, measure this, measure that, measure everything, and keep alerting the person. Okay, now this reading is there, your BP is this much, your this reading is that much. The
Yes.
important point is, if I am the patient and I continue to read that, then I become fearful.
Yes.
So if I don't die of that particular aspect, I would die of fear. Maybe okay, this is I don't know. This is overdose of, when you give overdose dose of information, every mind, every brain is going to interpret that in a different light, as per in the context of himself, or herself. So
Very true.
that in itself is pretty dangerous. If you misinterpret the information, and that to such in huge quantity, how is that? Even if you that gadget helps you in any way, like for example, it says, okay, you might there's a chance that you might suffer from something. That again itself is is pretty sort of dangerous
It
for your psyche, for your well-being, for your fine living. So
Yes, very true. Because I mean, look at these 20 companies like 23andMe, right? It's direct to consumer kits. Everybody, they send to everyone, and people get tested, and then they get the reports, that you have this gene, you have this mutation, you are likely to, you have certain percentage of having this disease, and then people, not everyone, is capable of evaluating this information that they are receiving from a different perspective. They don't go to doctors and talk about it, then they start getting fearful about it. So you are absolutely right that it causes a lot of fear. So there needs to be some sort of balance. Yes, direct to consumer thing is great, but we need to make sure that those kind of data, when it the consumers receive that, whether they should receive the information in certain way, whether what else needs to be there, so that there is not a fear or panic happening and causing bigger problems. So yes, you are right, there is a lot that we have to be careful about. And that I mean, another risk that I see emerging is that, as we identify what traits, what genes are responsible for what traits, for intelligence, for beauty, for all kinds of things, then people who are rich, who can afford, they will go for those gene editing and process, and they will achieve what they want to achieve, so that they have better capability. If we find out intelligence gene, then of course then they are going to go for that. And so they have a they are one step ahead than the rest of the public. So it is, there is also a lot of concern emerging that the playing field and the justice, all that, the level playing field is disappearing. I mean, it is still not a level playing field, but whatever, almost level playing field that, we have right now, that it will disappear, because then, rich will, just keep getting more and more enhancements. So that is also a big concern, that where should the gene editing application be allowed, and, what accountability and what structure we need to put about that, because these are all security risk emerging for the broader society that we are talking about, and it will impact the future of the humanity. So what are your thoughts on that? What where how do you see we put together a structure, governance structure, that is accountable for ensuring that we don't do any of these procedures, that can tilt the playing field, or that can create some evolutionary risk, security risk, or some other kind of risk that can emerge from that?
well, that's a pretty elaborate topic. It's I mean, coming out with or coming out with policies, how to regulate. Of course, it has to be regulated, but I am not really sure if, depending on the delivery of this type of a medical system, how easily accessible it is, how people can uh, uh, you know how easily it is accessible to people would determine its side effects, how they can misuse this particular technology. regulation has to come into picture, but then a lot of thinking needs to be done. I for now I do not know what exactly needs to be done in this area because it's so vast. The important point is, so whatever I say, I mean that's complete total guesswork because the technology itself is evolving so fast. So, for example, you just mentioned a moment back, getting dinosaurs back. I mean, what regulations are going
Yes,
so some rogue folks can play around with in any way they so I mean this area, this thinking where I mean some careful thought
yes,
need to go into uh, but yeah, this is a sensitive, this is a very it's almost like internet, how it started, nobody was able to regulate it, now even governments cannot regulate. In some countries it is regulated, but in a very limited fashion, but the entire world is almost open, as far as
yes,
internet is concerned. So
yes,
this particular thing, gene editing and related technologies, they have the power to change the entire healthcare of in the world. Like it's so potent, in other words, and so malleable, so flexible that I mean it can go to any extent. I
yes,
mean, it can start covering diseases, designer babies, changing the humanity, changing the society. I mean, every fabric of the society or humanity is going to get affected and change with this particular with this particular paradigm. So
yes,
I don't
very,
know.
very true. It's a disruptive technology, and there are a lot of securities that emerges from that. It has a huge potential. It could, like you said, fundamentally transform healthcare. It could do a lot of good for the humanity, but it could also, take humanity towards extinction. So there is a lot that we have to think about. We have to put together our collective thoughts in how best to regulate something like this, because the government regulation alone is not going to be effective. Because when
Sure.
you have democratization, of destruction, when anybody in any part of the world is able to do gene, editing without, any accountability or supervision or, legal liability or even understanding of risk, just the very thought that, oh, I can create this, I can create this personality trait for me, and let me do this gene splicing, or I want to remove this disease, and they do all these, themselves, or they create, some, using synthetic biology, broadly, they can create some organism to destroy some, ethnic group, or, uh, try to, create some sort of a biowarfare. So there is a lot that we
Yeah.
have to be very, very careful about. But let's talk about your initiatives. It looks like, you are also have some initiative towards precision medicine. So what would you like
Mhm.
to tell our global viewers and listeners about your initiatives and where you are going?
Well, we actually focus in precision medicine, pharmacogenomics, and our main focus is not on the DNA part, but on the gene expression part, which is the dynamic side of things. So, of course, we would be covering the DNA, but right now this company has just started. I mean, just a few months back. So our focus at this moment is on breast cancer and the gene expression patterns which vary in a breast cancer patient compared to a normal patient, and how patients are going to respond to a particular drug. So based on the gene expression patterns, we try to segregate or segmentize or stratify patients based on their gene expression pattern, and we have built some algorithms that try to match the patients with the drug. Like those patients who are most likely to respond well to a particular drug, we our system predicts that. So, that is where we are at this stage. Over a period of time, we are going to increase the size of the umbrella. Right now, breast cancer, but with time over a period, we are going to cover all the cancers there. Uh, Essentially, the problem in today's date is with respect to modern medicine is that uh, with respect to drug effectiveness, it's highly variable. Like just some time back, there was a publication in Nature where they had mentioned that the top 10 blockbuster drugs have very little effective. They are very little effective on patients, um, even blockbuster drugs. So because of the genetic makeup, we are all different. So our focus is to identify or segmentize those patients who are going to respond well to a particular therapy or therapy regimen. So we have published some papers with respect to breast cancer, and the results seem to be fairly encouraging. So let us see how it all pans out with that.
I think I'm really glad you are focusing on gene expression. I hope that there are more initiatives that emerge on that, because understanding of under what conditions a gene, expression happens, and how, whether that particular certain drugs would be effective, on certain patients, that is something, that knowledge is much, necessary. So I hope that you are able to figure out a lot of answers for the questions that we have, and you published, so that we are able to read that and benefit from that. So thank you so much, Dr. Chowdhary, for participating in Risk Roundup today. Our
Thank
global
you, Jashi.
viewers, our
Thank
global
you, Jashi.
thank you.
Thank you.
Our global viewers and listeners would benefit tremendously from the understanding you provided on gene editing, and even if a single individual or entity can benefit from the discussion we had today, this Risk Roundup dialogue has been of service, and we thank you for that. So, Risk Roundup, a global initiative launched by Risk Group, is a security risk reporting for risk emerging from existing and emerging technologies, technology convergence and transformation happening across cyberspace, aquaspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they all walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to the management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. And it is not possible to conceive any one of the three without the existence of the other two. All three concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security, so if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the Risk Roundups, to watch or listen to the Risk Roundup video audio podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com, and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayshree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.